How's everybody doing? I'm super honored to be here today, and this is like, you know, my type of thing, talking to a whole bunch of engineers and giving people information. I guess today we're really trying to give you a picture of what the modern day life of the engineer is and some of the challenges that we face, and to give you some information, even if you're not an engineer, as an artist, things that you can do to help your engineer make your product a little bit better. And as always, I think we should start with a little introduction. So I guess we can start all the way on my, you don't mind, do you, Miles?
No, of course.
Okay. And if you could do a brief introduction and just tell the people some of the key things you worked on. I mean, you don't have to do our whole discography, but just so people in the audience can understand who we are.
My name is Miles Walker. I've been an engineer here in Atlanta, but now I work all over. Actually, one of my main clients is Stargate, so I have the good fortune of working up there in New York with them and seeing Guru all the time. Worked on several records with them and other records in the past. Love engineering and mixing. That's what I do.
How's everybody doing? My name is Marsh. I'm an engineer, producer, mixer. One of my main clients is CeeLo. I started here in Atlanta, but I'm back and forth here to LA these days. But yeah, I've worked with many other people, but that's CeeLo takes up the majority of my time these days.
Greetings. My name is Zechariah Wise. I'm the president and CEO of Depth Charge Recording Group in Alexandria, Virginia. We're a full-fledged recording studio production company. It's the headquarters for my production company, which is called Team Demo. I've worked with all the DMV artists you can think of, plus done a lot of production recently. Haram by Sean Price, if you've heard that. One of the most notable things we've done was 50 Cent's record, Crime Wave. Worked with Obi Trice, a lot of shady stuff like that.
How you doing? I'm Renegade L. Ray. Recently, I'm mainly just a tracking engineer. I work out of Stank On You Studios. I actually manage the studio right now. Most notable artist that I'm working with right now is Big Boy on his up-and-coming album, Vicious Lies, Dangerous Rumors. Haven't got too much on the mixing end, but I do a lot of tracking with different artists, Rocco, Future, Killer Mike, people like that. So I'm just honored to be on the stage with these guys.
I echo that sentiment. What's up? It's the Professor. I work with DJ Burn One and 5 Points Music Group. Mostly home-based studio here, not too far from where we're located right now in Virginia Highlands. Worked with a lot of local artists. I had a lot of people through the spot over the years, but most recently we've worked with like the new S.L. Jones project, and most recently the Indeed project, which is from our own camp. Indeed Bass just dropped Tuesday. Grab it. Tracking, mixing, producing, music, everything. It all kind of evolved out of that.
Matt Hayes, mix engineer primarily, done a ton of tracking of all different types, vocals, live bands, all that kind of stuff. Credits include Yellow Wolf, Wiz Khalifa, Nakia, a lot of super hot beats, music, producer from Atlanta, and that's, I guess, the bulk of it right there.
What's up, man? You and me, man.
It's because we have all the engineers on stage.
The Goodbye remix by Slaughterhouse featuring Fat Joe. I worked with Sadat X. I did the Sky Zoo, Theo versus JJ. List goes on and on, Nori, etc., etc. I love mixing more so than tracking, and I love being in the studio. I'm a studio rat, period.
I guess my first question is more for the people that are here that are concerned with just being an engineer. And I just wanted to go down the line and kind of give them an idea of how you got started, or what was the thing that drew you in to finally say, hey, this is my job versus my aspiration. What, you know, guys come up to me all the time and ask, well, how do I get into the business? And it's a different world than when a lot of us started. So if you could just kind of give a quick story, I guess we could start with Fokis, on how you actually got to the point where this became your job.
I I started out as an artist. My producer didn't give me beats fast enough, so I started making beats. Couldn't afford paying for studio time, so we chipped in and got a studio, and I was just kind of doing it, and I guess that was my school right there, just years doing that. And as time went on, I just, got a new studio and just really made the investment into, doing it. I had a passion for it more so than anything, so I just wanted to go full-fledged with it.
I guess, Matt.
I actually started out as a musician, playing in bands, doing studio work, gigs, all that kind of stuff. And in the studio, just always kind of got frustrated, trying to talk to the engineer and get the sound that I wanted, but never really knew how to do it or how to talk to him and ask for what I wanted. So that was kind of my motivation to really kind of go into the engineering side of things. Went to school for it. Actually went to SAE, which we've got a booth over here. And then after that, did the internship thing, worked at a studio for about 4 years, kind of worked my way up the ladder, and then just kind of developed the network, the relationships, and just kind of, went from there and kind of went freelance and just always staying busy, I guess the best advice I could say is never turn down a project, let's just work. That's what it comes down to.
A lot of what Matt said as far as like when I was playing in bands and stuff, first I was a musician and would always find myself being the guy who wanted to run the sound for the band, wanted to like speak up in the studio when we were trying to record. But then in around '03 when I started producing, that's what really brought me into where I'm at now. Because whenever we were producing for people, you needed somebody to record it, and we didn't even have a spot, so we were working out of my house. I started, got Pro Tools, got, we got a mic, got a preamp, just started working it from there, just real, basic level, and realized that I was, people liked how stuff sounded that I worked on, and just, kept doing that, and it's just evolved over the years, really, just continuing to work with local artists, word of mouth, just it's really been kind of more of an underground experience for me at this point, even now, even though I'm working out in some major spots, I'm still working mostly out of my spot, right here. So.
I guess, too, in answering the question, one of the main questions that I get on a daily basis is, internship and how important is being an intern in a studio, or where can I go to be an intern, especially in New York City because, we're losing a lot of or have lost a lot of our major studios. So guys come up to me all the time. How important was your apprenticeship period? And I guess we can just continue down the line, but how important is that sitting underneath of someone else that knows what you're trying to learn?
I think internships are key. A lot of people want to run before you walk. You want to walk before you crawl, but internships, like really cleaning toilets, making food runs, that's the most important thing because it keeps you grounded. And like you said, working under engineers, like my mentor was John Fry, and he mixed everything that as far as Outkast goes, when they were coming hard and people were really taking notice, that's all John Fry, the Lil Jon, that hard 808. John Fry, he taught me how to mix, so I do mixing now, but learning from him and learning the importance, not even really learning how to mix, but learning little things. He's like, you made the coffee, did you give me some sugar? Did you give me some creamer? So then when you translate that into engineering, it's like, okay, I set up my template for the artist, but it's an R&B artist. Did I give her some reverb? She wants to sing with reverb. So, being an intern, that translates into thinking ahead and thinking about the details when you're mixing and working with artists.
For me personally, I never was in. I started as an artist. I think I just was saying that. I don't know if any of us really ever started as engineers. We kind of all get into engineering later because I remember being 16 years old and I was coming up and had management in New York and going to recording studios and recording all kinds of stuff and sitting in on other people's sessions and saying to myself, the only person who's being paid to be here right now is the engineer. Like, other people here might get paid, or, eventually will get paid, but right now, someone who's gonna walk home with I need to learn how to do that shit. Because that's, because at the end of the day, that's, so with me, I got kicked around by a couple of major labels when I was a kid, and I got frustrated and I started an indie label, and I built the studio basically with leftover money from budgets gone bad and stuff like that in my basement, and really just to support my music and my crew. And one thing led to another. People would hear the stuff and be like, yo, man, I want to record with you. Yeah, I'll pay you. And I think I started letting people come in for like $20 an hour, and it just evolved and evolved and evolved. I mean, for me, like, I didn't have, because I'm from Washington, D.C., our scene hadn't really fully developed to where it is today. Back then, there weren't many places to go. So I didn't really have the opportunities for internships. I kind of had to learn by trial and error, throwing my own self into the fire, buying equipment, having my dinner slid under my door and just sitting with it and learning how to use it. And today, I think more than ever, because the technology is so readily available, and because you can, back when I started, I was cutting tape with razor blades. Now you can get a laptop with some DAW software on it. You can sit around and self-educate yourself to death. I mean, obviously going to school is important, but you can play around to your heart's content. Back in the days, we had to try to get into a studio if you didn't have one to try to learn that stuff. And now you can learn a lot of the ins and outs by reading on your own. And it's like anything else today. The knowledge is available, but if you can find somebody clearly that can take you under their wing, that will give you an apprenticeship, I mean, that's a godsend. That's something that will, that you have something that a lot of people that started didn't when I was coming up.
As we move on, you brought up a great point, and I think this is applicable for today, where we have guys that are trying to learn engineering.
Right.
They may start out, and you said, hey, I opened up my studio for $20.
Right.
And even something that's not so technical, how would somebody know how much to charge or how much they should be getting at what point? I think that's an important question, because I have a bunch of guys who will come up and say, hey, well, so-and-so from my neighborhood wants me to record them. How much should I charge them? Before they even get into major label situations, because I think a lot of the work now is being done, as a blue-collar work with guys that maybe don't have deals, because the way the music business is structured now is so much different than our time of coming up. And for those that don't know, the old school way of doing it would be, hey, I get a session, I get a PO number, everything was official that way, where now even signed artists may want to work on a mixtape or something, and my guys come up to me and they say, hey, Guru, I just recorded a whole mixtape for a guy, but I didn't get, how much am I supposed to ask for? So what do you guys, and I guess we'll continue down, but what do you guys think is the way that you're supposed to gauge yourself before you get into a quote-unquote professional session?
It's tricky because a lot of artists don't like to talk about business, and you approach people and, they want to make music, you want to be creative, but then, hey, we need to talk business, I want to get paid for this. And it's hard to judge starting out, and it's not, I'm lucky enough to still live in the PO world, so to gauge what to charge, at that level is tough. But you don't want to overcharge, and you're at that level, you're probably still starting out too. So it's hard for me to say a specific number.
The way I see it is you have to look what you're providing versus what. Because nowadays, guys are going to somebody, who's got a little setup in their closet at home or whatever, and what value am I adding? What am I able to provide in this, over top of you? My price point is to the point now, like when I first started, I had to record a lot of crap, and there were times where I would sit in the studio for 6 hours and be like, I would have rather bust tables. You know what I'm saying, for the last 6 hours, than I had to deal with what I just had to deal with. But now my price point's high enough where it's like I know the quality I'm delivering is top notch. And if you want to go and pay $25 an hour to your man who's got, a little setup in his crib or whatever, that's cool. But ultimately what I find happening now is guys are then still picking up the phone, calling me and being like, yo, you got to mix this, you got to save this shit. And I'm like, if you had called me originally, I'd have given you a great price. You'd have probably ended up spending less, because when I record it, I'm gonna record it right into my mix templates. I'm gonna be working on it as we're going, and you're gonna spend a lot less money. You know what I'm saying? If you're just coming in, it's gonna sound better. But now I gotta sit here and charge you a flat rate to mix it because I gotta sit here and clean up somebody else's dirty work for. So it's a tough thing. And like you said, with people doing projects that they're not getting paid for, they know going in they're not getting paid. We're putting this out for free. It's like, okay, well, I'm not. So this is what I do for a living. It's like anything else. We could probably all paint a house if we want to paint a house. But do I really want to paint my house? Like, I'd rather hire a professional painter who paints houses all the time. It's worth the extra money. Pay him. He's going to do it right. He's not going to make the 6 mistakes I make that because I'm not a professional painter to go back. So if you frame it to people that way and present it in that, like, look, you want professional shit, you got to pay professionals. Like, that's what you do. It's like hiring a lawyer. It's like hiring anything else. You want your brother that, who's in law school representing you when your life's on the line, or you want to pay for a lawyer? And that's,
I kind of want to piggyback on what he was saying as far as the quality, when you're given a certain quality. But I think for anybody to try to answer your question as best as possible, as an engineer, you got to be kind of real with yourself. Like, where am I at? Like, am I going to have it kind of fuzzy? Is it going to be a little distorted? Can I get it crisp the way it is? So, like, as you look at people like Guru or, anybody else that you might Google and look up and see what type of projects they're doing, okay, and if you're fortunate enough to get around somebody and see what they're charging, be real with yourself as an engineer. It's like, okay, I ain't really there yet, so if he charging 7 racks to mix a record, I can't really do that. I charge you 200. But you don't want to break the bank, and you kind of want to work with people because you got to get your name up. So, you might want to charge them 200, charge them 50. Go ahead and get it. Make sure it's done right. Now you just charge somebody $50 for a $300 worth mix, and then they gonna love you for life, and that's just building your relationship.
So does that, and I guess I want to ask, you can answer the question as well, but I kind of want to throw this in the mix because a lot of what is going on right now is different, again, from the way that our lives were set up years ago because of the industry. So would it be more valuable, and I was looking at Miles for this because there's a lot of engineers now, or I see the industry is really clicked up, where someone finds a great engineer and he sticks with that person, or that person represents that person to the rest of the world. So is it more valuable for you to try to get in with a certain group of people, or is the independent, just call me and I'll mix your record or record your record engineer thing still valuable? And I guess with your work with Stargate, I don't see anybody else working with them, so it's like that's sort of the way it is.
It's interesting because all the questions you've asked kind of tie together. To know what you charge, I completely agree with what you just said. Is like, be honest with yourself, know where your skill level is at. The easiest way to know where your skill level is at is if you apprenticed under a master, you watch what they did intimately. You didn't buy it when it came out after all the bells and whistles have been put on it. You saw the work that they put into it. Can I do that? Yes, I can do that. Or I can do half of that or whatever, and it's reflected in the price. As far as being tied to one producer, one group, one artist versus spreading it around, that's definitely more of a new challenge as budgets go down, labels and artists like that. But it's also something that's been around for a long time. Producers in particular who have like a really high workload. Artists work when they make an album, but producers work all the time. They're making records for all kinds of people. Their workflow might be so specific they really need to tie into one person, and it becomes a crutch for them. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good crutch. It helps them be completely creative and not like, I can't get these ideas out because I'm explaining my work process to a new engineer I've never worked with before. I mean, I know CeeLo, in addition to being an artist, is a great producer, and he wouldn't be able to do as much as he does if he didn't have Graham, who just, watching them work is laughable because they just don't say anything. They just work. And, fortunately, that's how it is with Stargate and I too. And they're very technical. They can do a lot of things on their own. But when it gets to that point where they're like, we want somebody who's specifically engineering focused, they pull it in and, we do what we do. All that being said, Stargate also gives me a lot of rope to work on other projects as well. So I am able to diversify. I think it's about just keeping a good business practice within yourself. If Stargate calls me, I'm dropping anything I got going on because of my respect and history with them. But in the meantime, I will spread it around. because if you put all your eggs in one basket, all it takes is them to be like, hey, we're not making records for the next 2 years. They can afford to do that. I cannot afford to do that. So, sometimes it's important to have other things lined up, but, I definitely am a fan of having a strong client that is a percentage of your work and respecting it fully.
Now, are there certain things that, I guess, in that relationship that you would do for free and not necessarily get specifically paid for? And again, I'm going off of my own personal experience where there's like, if I'm, working on a project for someone and then I get a call about something else that's concerned, with that artist, and not just Jay, just artists that I've worked with,
Right.
I end up doing things for free
Absolutely.
to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But newer guys may not be able to know how to judge where I'm supposed to get paid and when this is like, hey, I'm just holding you down. And, sometimes that becomes a great thing. If you look at 40, who does a whole Drake mixtape for free, but then that ends up being his kick in the door that gets him doing Sade records, then yes, you're supposed to do that. But then I have a lot of guys who sometimes get abused, and they end up doing 10 mixtapes and never get paid. So how do you judge that?
And you gotta just keep in mind that it's business, and sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't. You gotta use your discretion to see what's worth it. So, out of left field, I got a phone call to do a Fat Joe and Slaughterhouse track, and I was gonna do it for free. I was like, all right, let's do it. But, fortunately, it was through the company, and I was able to get paid for that. But it's about your dedication. For me, I look at every day you're learning. Like, I'm a fiend. I'm on YouTube looking at new plugins, and like, you have to kind of treat it like that. Though you're getting paid and you're gonna get some money, but it's also practice, and you should try to like always be trying to get better and better and better. And I look at other people's mixes and listen, like, damn, what did he do? How does vocals sound like that? So it's really about your commitment, your passion, and the belief in yourself that, you know what, I know how to monetize this free project that I'm doing for this person, because now I can take that credit and I can go to my boys and be like, yo, I just did a project for this kid. Word? Now they'll pay you, So you just got to kind of use your own discretion with that.
I think for me, because I have my own room, I have a studio. I have the flexibility of being like, look, you got to pay for the room. Like, the room's the room. You walk into the room, you got to pay for this room. And if you build a nice room, you got your own little facility. It's like, yo, you come in and using a room. I could have somebody else in here. I have other engineers who come in and bring their projects in. They're just paying a room rate, and they're charging on top of that to their clients of what it is their rate is, or maybe it's nothing. I don't know. That's between them. But for me, it's like, okay, I have the flexibility to be like, look, if we got something we can maybe work out or whatever, and I like what you're doing, and this is something that we're trying to build a future, business relationship with, I'll just charge you for the room for this, this one, understanding that as things grow and things mature, that, this isn't my rate. I'm not getting paid. This money's going into the business account, and I'm not drawing a paycheck from your project. And so having that room and having a separate, I don't know how many of you guys, I know a lot of you guys, sounds like a lot of you guys float around to different spots. But if you have if just having that central location, that room, it's like I can use that as my defense. Like, dude, the room is this.
Electricity costs.
Yeah, electricity costs. If you want to use the room, opportunity costs. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm in here mixing your record, right, I can't work on something else that's making me money. So we got to do something here, and I think eventually too, like, if you really, really pick and choose the right guys, you'll get to the point where they want to pay you. And I tell people this all the time. People always want to try to work out, like, we used to call them spec deals back in the days, speculative arrangements where, if I get a deal, I'll give you this and this. I'm like, you should want to pay me now, because I'm going to take you to the cleaners because of the risk I'm taking. I'm taking a huge risk if I'm going to put in $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 worth of work and not get a dime potentially. Then I'm going to take a nice percentage of your, I'm going to take more money than I really should have, just because there's a big chance I'm not going to get paid. So pay me now. Pay me now. I'll give you a good rate. I'll give you a discount. Pay me now, and you never have to worry about me again. And you can go blow up and do all you want, and unless you're going to call me to bring you in on your next project and work on that, you don't ever have to worry about me again. But if you start doing stuff and wanting to start finagle things around, like, oh, let's work something out on the back end, I'm gonna make sure you pay for that. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna make sure that, you know, I get mine at the end if you do actually blow up. So
I kind of want to piggyback on that. In my opinion, I think you should always look at it like a customer service type deal.
Yep.
So it's you know, if I just tracked out the whole mixtape and I ain't charge you nothing, then of course I'm gonna charge you for the mix. And because you work, you try to have, like he was saying, when you set up a template, you try to have it already halfway mixed by the time you're done anyway. So yeah, I'm not gonna worry about that because on this end I'm doing something else, and it's kind of like building a relationship. So you just kind of like what Fokis said, you want to be hungry for the work anyway because you like doing it, but at the same time it's like, okay, pick and choose your battles. Like, okay, that's nothing. I can do that in an hour. And I would have been watching TV if I wasn't. So I ain't gonna trip on this, but something else is gonna take me half of a day to do these many tracks or whatever, then I'll charge for that, you know. But like I said, it's just going back to being customer service friendly.
Yeah, going off of that too, like, I feel like you have to look at what he said, like what you're gonna get out of something, you know, not that you want to just be all, you know, if I'm not gonna get anything out of it, then I'm not gonna do it for free, but it's just a matter of, you know, you look at the artists themselves that you're working with and how seriously they're taking their projects and you know how serious they're going to work their stuff. You know, have you already seen them doing stuff? Have you already seen them promoting their stuff out there? Like, because those are the people that the free or the discounted projects are going to benefit the most. The ones that are going to take their music. Because I mean, a lot of us around here are working with people who are either signed and are still working on independent projects, or are independent and signed to indie labels, or just working by themselves. That's, you know, not everybody's at the same level, but so with working with artists who are on that level, you really have to look at their hustle and like their grind and like their presentation to see if doing extra things for them on the low are going to be beneficial to you or not, because you can't just do it for anybody. It's like it's a relationship, and a relationship works both ways. So, you know, if I'm working with somebody that I know is really like working their ass off, and they hit me up like, yo man, I need a radio version of this song like tonight, then I'll make sure that they get it tonight. You know what I mean? But if it's somebody who's just kind of been nickel and diming me the whole time, and they're not really like, you know, taking their shit that seriously, or at least even if they think they're taking it seriously, they're not actually taking it seriously, then, you know, those people are going to have to wait, you know, in a lot of situations. But even then, you know, you have to look at it like, okay, well, am I busy right now, too? Like, am I working? Am I doing something that's making me money right now? If that other person who's not taking shit seriously calls me while I'm making money, they're going to have to wait. They just have to wait. That's, you know.
Not to cut you off, I'm curious, just piggybacking off of that, and this is probably another question that I'm sure you're going to allude to. How many of y'all are actually producing these records? I mean, really, like,
that was a question I was going to get
to. I mean,
it's great that you said it, but I think that's good for the engineers that are out there. And I mean, we should go right there and be specific. It's like when you get to the point where someone's handed you a record, but then they're like, oh, well, I don't like my drums.
Right.
And do you have drum sounds? And, hey, well, I didn't really kind of play the drums right. Can you line these up? And can you do this?
Right.
At what point, and that gets into another thing, at what point as the engineer do you step to the side and say, hey, I'm now producing, and that means that I deserve points on your project.
And we're in this, with the technology being what it is, and everybody's all over the place. I mean, a lot of times I'm in the studio, and the actual person who would be credited as the producer, I guess, because he made the beat. See, hip hop changed that, like changed what the definition of a producer is altogether. So, you know, that's really an arranger and a composer. And suddenly I'm in the studio, and I've got the most production experience in the room, and the guy who's supposedly the producer of the record, he's not here. The 50 Cent record we did for Crime Wave, I mean, I'm glad my crew, Team Demo, got credited for the production. I wasn't in the room when he did the vocals. Like, he sent for the track, said he'd already done the vocals over the 2-track, and, you know, okay, in the classic sense of the word, we composed and arranged that beat. On the record, it's production, and I got the credit for it. But that's not, you know, that's not production in my mind. Like, Quincy Jones's production in my mind. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Amen.
so when you're in there, and the next thing you know, they got a singer in there, and she or he doesn't know what the heck they're doing. And then the next thing I know, I'm coaching harmonies, and I'm pulling up my Fender Rhodes to play her harmonies, what I want to do for her. Then you get to the point where it's like, okay, look, dude.
I'm doing vocal production.
Yeah, like I'm doing vocal production here, and now I'm making decisions like that your producer should be making, like who's not here. I'm making big critical decisions on where drops are and like what we're going to do on this particular, what are we doing with the bridge, and I think now like the engineer has kind of evolved into the only
producer,
right? Because there is no producer, there is no guy in there that's overseeing it. And a lot of times the guy who made the beat, who's producing it, will be there, but he don't know.
Right.
He don't.
So
he
I guess
just make a beat for 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years or something, and he doesn't know what.
For our audience, the guys that are in the audience, so when is it the point where I step up and say, I'm producing and I deserve, if it's not necessarily money, I deserve at least credit or points so that if this project does sell well, then I'm getting compensated for it. And I guess another part of that question is how much of that is because of the internet age that we live in now, where said artist is receiving a 2-track MP3 from the producer. The producer's never really in the same room as the artist. The engineer is the only person that's always in the room.
Right.
So I mean, how much of that is because of that age?
Well, I hope that there's someone I can talk to that's not the artist, because what he said earlier is exactly right. Like, I hate talking business directly with the artist because I want to focus with the artist. I want to build a relationship that's based on creativity and about the music. And talking about money kind of muddies that up. Like, if ultimately, in the real, if all things were perfect, I would say your people talk to my people. When they tell me it's good, we're good. But I'll let them know.
Is it more advantageous to have a manager then?
Yeah, but I will let them know. Like, okay, you do realize, like I hope when you're doing the split sheet for this record, that you give me a call, and think of me, because I did go above and beyond. But the other thing too is that's why you do that a couple times at first, because that's what brings your clients back.
Definitely.
Clients come back to me because I'm not just engineering their record. Like, they go to, man, he doesn't even help me, and he just says, oh yeah, it's okay or whatever, and you'll tell me like that I missed a word, and you'll tell me that do it again. It's not because I think we're all producers at heart, and it's impossible to fully take that hat off, especially if you're feeling it. If you're in there and you're like, this might be something special, your producer instincts are going to kick in.
You want to make it more special.
Right, you're going to make it more special. You want to be a part of something, because it doesn't happen all that often. Like, maybe a small percentage of records you ever do are extraordinary. You got a lot of stuff that's okay, this is good, this is decent, and you got a lot of stuff that's like, yeah, whatever.
I can speak specifically to this because my relationship with CeeLo grew from his tracking engineer to now his co-producer. So it's extremely subjective and it's extremely tricky. Every situation is going to be different, and there's a lot of gray area. The name of me and CeeLo produced together as the gray area because of this conversation. That's our production name, because of this conversation. And it didn't happen overnight, and it took, a while to get to this. Because even in this industry, it's hard because when you're an intern, if you're lucky enough to get into a studio, they're always going to look at you as the intern until you leave and you become an assistant. Yep. They're going to always look at you as an assistant until you leave and become an engineer. So, you have to have finesse, and it is great to have, at some point you're going to have a direct conversation with someone and really explain yourself. And it's hard to say, because if you're just sound replacing sounds and, hey, can you just change the sound of that kick drum? Is that production? I don't know. You're using your sounds. I don't think so. That's certainly not writing. So do I deserve a point? Do I get publishing? And it's also a whole other thing about understanding. It's a whole other conversation, but understanding publishing and royalties in that game, which is a whole nother, ball game, and it's kind of ethereal, when you get into it. But like I said, it's hard. There's no set way to do it because every artist is different, every situation is different.
That publishing's a bargaining. That's a bargaining chip too. Talking about not getting paid, you can
Right,
I've
right.
worked with a couple people where I'll be like, well, look, they'll be like, I'll cut you in on the end, especially like R&B or other stuff where I'm recording a piano, them playing the piano part, and then I'm building around what they've done and maybe adding bass lines and stuff like that. They'll be like, look, I'm not doing this for any money, but I'm gonna cut you in, I'm gonna cut you 25% of the publishing. Okay, a little better. If you got a publishing deal, yeah, I think I can work with that,
I think they should go towards also like your how comfortable you are with their artist. Because like if you've been working with their artist and as you asked about the clientele or whatnot, and you build that rapport with their artist, then all the questions that you just asked kind of tie in because okay, so he's comfortable with me now, so he's gonna be like, how did that sound? Or do you think I should have a drop right there? Then you do something, and then now once you get into co-producing, you don't even have to really have that conversation. Right. Because they're gonna when you bust down the split sheets and the publishing and whatnot, then they're gonna include you in on the writing. They're gonna include you in on the production and stuff like that. And then if they don't, that goes back to your question about the price. Okay, they stiff me on that. I ain't gonna trip. But when they come back, they know I'm gonna charge them a little bit more, and then we cool with it. Because at the end of the day, I'm not getting no publishing, and it's what I'm saying. It's a gray area, but you got to be strong enough as an individual to be like.
You're almost experimenting at the beginning with each one to see it. Okay, well, how's this person gonna,
I mean, and two, like I used to think about the monetizing part like too much to the point where I'd be like, well, I'm gonna sit here and vocal line, or if I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do that, then I'm gonna start. I wanted to itemize it or something, and eventually I started to realize like, no, just give everything that you can within reason with each project, as long as somebody's taking care of you, so that. They will. That's what establishes that relationship. That's what makes the person want to come back. Most of the people that I work with, even though I'm working out of a home studio, don't want to go other places, even if it's just for tracking, because they already know that I'm not going to let bullshit fly on their vocals. I'm gonna.
They're not coming to work at your studio. They're coming to work with you.
Me, right.
And that's the important thing.
I feel like that's really because I mean you can move into any room. Okay, well you got a bigger budget. Let's go to Tree.
Right.
Let's go to Tagonia. Let's go somewhere.
Right.
Fine. That's great.
I guess so we don't monetize this conversation too much, but I thought the business part was important. Kind of shifting gears into creative and creativity. How do you guys stay up on new techniques, or how do you stay fresh in developing your sound? Or I guess how did you develop your sound? Or I guess I could start with Miles. Like to go from super pop Rihanna to all the way to probably having the biggest hip hop record of last year with Black and Yellow. Like, I hear such a different, a whole range of music coming out of that B room. How do you, approach doing such different projects, or how do you, think of a sound that you're going to apply to each record?
Well, for me, it's pretty simple. I like to pay attention, but don't lean on my contemporaries. Like the people that I look up to, I listen to what they're doing and be like, yeah, I like that. I'm going to do a little bit of that. Someone said a long time ago, good engineers borrow from other engineers, but great engineers steal. So, in a way that's sort of true. If you get an idea, take it, but then make it your own after you have it. I think I'm a pretty pop-oriented guy. That's kind of my thing. But something like Black and Yellow, that really just came together, man. I mean, I would love to be like, yeah, I was doing this, but it was really the energy of Wiz and, how he came on that track. Also with his new one, too, Work Hard, Play Hard. Like, I mean, the first 7 lines of that were the first take, like, out the gate, and just set the artist up to be successful in their own way as an engineer. Like, put them in an area that they're comfortable and, try your sonic stuff on it. Like in Black and Yellow, for instance, there's all those echo delays, talking about mixing templates. I had that there. So, like, as Wiz was listening back, those throws were already in place, and he's like, that's it, that's what's up, and I'm like, oh, okay, great, it just felt good to me. I wasn't like, okay, that's what's up, Wiz, I'm gonna need about 2 points on production. Like, it didn't ever occur. It was just like, hey, I'm glad you like it. Call me to do the next one, and he did. So when you have good customer service, I heard that earlier, and make no mistake, as an engineer, you are in the customer service industry.
No doubt.
That's what's up. And that's a great thing, though, because you help people get to their musical goals. And they can't do it without you, and that's a really good feeling. So, I mean, I'm an engineer. I'm not an engineer / producer, mixer. I do all kinds of production elements, but it doesn't ever occur to me to approach that because I just want people to come back to me and be their engineer. So, sonically, I just say I do things I like. If I like it, I do it. And if I hear somebody else do it, I'm gonna try and figure out how to do it like them.
So you would say one of the big things is listening to other records.
I get a lot of inspiration from other people, you know what I mean? And in downtime, if I ever have any, just checking out new stuff. I love new software. And old gear. I always buy everything and mess with it as much as I can and just see if something new comes up. And if it does, write it down, member it, save a preset, and pass it on. You know?
I think making beats helps. I'm sure everybody up here messes around a little bit if they don't actually sell beats and do production. Making beats helps because you can end up working on something and then instead of making a beat, you end up spending 4 or 5 hours just experimenting with different stuff on it, right? Like different stuff on different instruments, and the next thing you know, you're like, I love Digital Performer. It's my favorite. I'll just save I can put a thing in. I'll save a stack of plugins. Like I'll have this guitar processor with this tape warmer and this, and stack them together and save it as a stack, and I can literally draw that up and on something when someone else comes in. And I think the other thing too is like getting the other records. Like when Amy Winehouse Back in Black came out, I listened to that shit. First of all, the music was fantastic, but I listened to that album. I studied that album from an engineering perspective, like no album I've studied in
I think that's important. Can you speak a little bit on studying albums from an engineering perspective where you turn your hat around and you're not just enjoying the record, you're studying the record.
You go in and you research, you're like, okay, what did they do? And with the information being available now, like a lot of people are document this stuff. They're like, okay, this is the Dap Kings playing this. Well, this is all tube gear that they're going through. Okay, but then
drums on one end.
Right, yeah. That so getting all that information, it's like, okay, well, I may not be able to. I don't have all that tube gear. I've got some tube gear, but I don't have all the particular things they have. But what can I do to simulate that and get that as close as I can with what I have? And if I need something, I'll go buy it. And the other thing too is, back in the days, now print media is dead, but I don't know. I had a free subscription just because I had a recording studio. I had a free subscription to Electronic Musician and Mix for 15 years. Like I had every issue stacked, and every time one of those things came out, this first thing I do in my office, if I had an hour, was read everything about everything that's new that's coming out that I can try, whatever. Go to get a good relationship with your local Guitar Center people, or whatever, where if you got a guy there who will let you come in and screw around. Oh, did you get that new thing? Yeah, come back in the back. We'll mess around with it, and that can give you a lot of, because it's not even, a lot of times it's not even that particular thing. I'll go in and look at it and be like, what is this compressor? This compressor sounds awesome. What are the settings? And I'll literally take my cell phone and snap a picture of the plugin and go back and start messing with the same, try to duplicate the settings at home, or in my studios.
Like you said, snapping pictures of settings and stuff like that when you're looking at stuff. And Mix Magazine, a lot of these audio magazines, they're dropping jewels on you, and a lot of people don't even think to pick it up.
Sound on Sound, that's the best one.
Exactly.
Sound on Sound is my favorite magazine.
I remember John Fry. I was just cleaning up one day, and he just brought me a subscription with my name on it. It was like, you want to do this? Here you go.
Tape-Op is free. Tape-Op is great, and it's free.
Tape-Op is awesome. Tape-Op is great.
Yeah, so analyzing albums, mags, and stuff like that, and like he was saying down here, on your downtime, if any, then you want to play with some stuff. You're already thinking, how did they do that? How did they have those delay throws here and here and here bouncing off? But it wasn't like your normal slapback. So it's like, as you read these magazines, then you go in and you play with it. It's just like if you go to SAE, Full Sail, or any of these schools, when you leave these labs, you need to go in and play with the stuff, and that's how you figure out that's how to do it.
Reverse engineer what you hear. Try to reverse engineer.
There's also like online. I've found a lot of older sessions. So a lot of times I would take that session and try to recreate that record. Or when I do my,
you get they actually have a full session of a song like a popular song that you can actually load up yourself and play around with?
Absolutely.
Yeah, stems. There's stems out there
Really?
for like classic records.
Oh man, I gotta
Like
do that.
major stuff.
I didn't know that.
I got Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or when I do my labs at SAE, that's one of the big things that I actually like to bring in an actual Jay-Z record that guys are familiar with. So if I'm like teaching an SSL class, I'll put up a Jay-Z record and say, hey, you know what this sounded like, here's what it is raw.
Right.
So, now you have the opportunity to try to get back to that record. But for the guys that, you can go to SAE, that's a big plug, but for the guys that can't do that, like, what are the things that, I guess my question is when you're listening to these records or when you listen to old school records, where do you do the research to find out? Okay, if it's the Beatles, yeah, that's all written out in the Red Book. But other places, like if I'm listening to a Stax record, how do I figure out how they made those records? And how important is it to listen to records from the 60s, 70s, 80s and understand what those sounds are?
Yeah, well, it all, definitely the old school stuff, everything kind of built up from that. So knowing where we came from shows you how we got to where we are now. But as far as the research thing, and as you're saying, like turning the hat around and stop listening as a fan and listen as a professional, I think you get to a point when you've been in the studio and been working on records where you kind of listen to everything that way. Just listening to the radio, I'm sitting there dissecting, listening to, the compression on the vocals and how does that make it sound and the balance of the kick and the vocals and the snares and all that kind of stuff. Just constantly analyzing everything I hear, almost not even a fan anymore. You know what I mean? Like, fan of good quality production and quality mixing. But really half the time I don't listen to lyrics so much anymore. I'm kind of focusing more on just the actual audio quality and kind of how everything fits together. Because, sonic composition, because when you're mixing, it's almost like a big jigsaw puzzle, trying to make everything fit together. So I'm always trying to analyze what I'm hearing and just, figure out how they place those pieces together,
Right. I guess, not to even cut you off, I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to ask, though, is for the artists and also for engineers that are in the room, you guys being professionals at what you do, what are some of the mistakes or some of the constant mistakes that you see from projects that you get from, let's say, home studios or from people that haven't gone into a professional studio, or maybe guys that are serious and want to pay you some good money and they really value their project, but they recorded it at home? What are some of the things that they can do better in that home situation so that when you get it, you don't get these mistakes? If you could just say what the mistakes are and how the people can avoid
The
them.
first thing I always see, that I see a lot, is people recording way too loud. Way too loud. Like, there's no undo if it's clipping. There really isn't. There's
Not at all. Not
I
at
can't
all.
fix it. Like, I've had people go to other studios, like, and that's what is really weird. Like, when someone comes from a studio that charged them a decent amount of money and they bring me in a file and they had some kid recording it, and I'm like, and they're like, can you mix this? Can you make it sound better? I'm like, I can't save this one, man. I can't. Like, I'm sorry. It's just floored. If you're gonna err on the side of anything, err low. And then the other thing I hear a lot from is I hear where you're not recording in a controlled space, like where you haven't put any kind of sound treatments up on your right. And I'm hearing room drywall reflections, and it's like, now I got you recorded them uncompressed. I got drywall reflections. Now when I compress it, the drywall reflections are like, hello, we're drywall reflections.
A lot
it's
of
like,
buzz.
right?
Got a lot of buzz in it.
Buzz and air conditioning noise and all that. The air conditioning noise is actually good thing. You can actually, like sound soap and stuff like that, you can actually get some of that out. But okay, now I got to go and put an expander on this. I got to try to get all this. That's the three main things I see with vocals. And it's just a matter of, one of the things I tell people is, okay, I ask them, where were you recording? I mean, I can go into a hotel room if I got 4 or 5 sound blankets from like Audimute or something like that, a decent preamp and a decent mic and a laptop, and I can record vocals that can make it on a major label record. I'm confident in that. I know I can do it.
The last Watch the Throne most of it was done in a hotel room.
Yeah.
So what are the ways to avoid that? I mean, I myself, I love the SE reflector. I love that thing.
That thing's great.
I think that's a huge thing that came out that's very affordable, that mimics a booth. Of course, nothing is the same thing as having
I don't have a booth. I have an open floor plan recording space, and I just put partitions up. I just built partitions I got some particle board, and I wrapped them with sound blankets, and I put them behind, and I basically cornered off an area. I don't have a window there, so I put closed circuit TV up as my window. So you basically look in the camera, and you're looking through the TV, and in the control room, you're looking through the TV. And as long as my first direction's hitting something, and then behind me where I'm standing, if you've ever looked at old footage of Jay and Biggie and them recording, they're always standing. You'll see those two things. There's gonna be like a half wall behind them. That's just a partition. That's stopping any sound from bouncing back and getting. It's pretty simple. And then if you're using a mic, make sure you're using a mic with a cardioid pickup pattern and point it in a direction where there's no noise coming from. I mean, you'd be surprised. People are pointing the thing they're in a closet in their basement, and the thing's pointing at their air conditioning rig, their HVAC rig, and it's like, well, what do you expect? Right. What do you think's going to happen?
As we continue, I want to make sure, because we only have, I think, about 10 minutes left, if there's any questions, we can start to line up at this microphone here if there's specific questions, but I wanted to let you answer that question as well.
Just going to mistakes, a lot of producers, especially, that are bouncing these 2-track files and sending them out to artists that are, sound clicking or whatever they're doing to get these beats from people, they'll be extremely loud to begin with. Yeah. So not only are vocals sometimes clipping because of that, but also people are having insanely loud headphone mixes and don't tell anybody about it, and they're yelling when they shouldn't be yelling, because that's not what that's not performing, that's yelling. That's, what I'm saying?
And that's a huge challenge for us, because I think probably half of what I do is now over 2-track mixes. So now I got this loud, very, very loud thing. These guys want a decent rough mix, and they're probably going to use that rough mix, in all honesty, on their mixtape. So what do I have to do? I've got this super loud with no dynamic range in it at all. For those who don't know what dynamic range is, just quickly, the dynamic range is the difference between your loudest sound and your softest sound. And you got to try to leave a pocket in there so that when we're recording the vocals over a 2-track, I got a little space to just stick that in there. So what happens is everything's so loud, everything's been floored. Now what I got to do is turn the vocals way up, throw a limiter on, and squash them back in. And it just sounds like a solid noise. And you look at the wave, and there's actually a site. There's a site called turnmeup.org or turnitup.org. That's basically they're like on the front lines of the loudness wars in the industry. Like, the rules should be put a limiter on your master fader and then start pulling the threshold down. And when that thing just starts tapping, stop. Right. Like, just when it starts tapping, stop, and that should leave you enough dynamic range. It's still loud. A lot of producers are mastering their beats.
Absolutely.
Before there's vocals on.
That's where this is all coming from. Is people mastering beats. Or starting in beat programs where the levels are so loud that everything's peaking when they first start making the beat. So by the time they're done, everything's super peaking because they keep turning stuff up and nothing down.
Because they're on a laptop and they're trying to get more volume into their headphones because they're trying to rock out. And that's the other thing too is try to record it. I know it's tempting, but try to turn it down when you're working on it too. It's like walking into a bright room. Like, if you walked into a room and there were all kinds of lights on it, but they're really, really bright, but they're at different brightnesses, you won't know when you walk into the room which one's brighter. If you turn them all down, you can go and be like, that one's the least brightest, that one's the next brightest, it's the same thing with music. If you listen to everything blaringly loud, everything sounds loud. You can't tell the 2 decibel difference between one part and another if it's all loud.
And your EQs don't work the same
anymore.
And
your EQs don't work
the same anymore. Right. But just one little thing. So for the actual advice for that problem, when you're recording at home or whatever, turn your track down when you record your vocals and keep your headphones at a reasonable level so that you're actually performing the record and not just yelling the words in time.
And you'll save your ears later on in life. You'll actually still be able to hear it, because I'm surprised a lot of kids now, like there's even studies about it, like from earbuds, the earbud generation of kids that are 26, 27 years old, and their hearing's deteriorated by 40% already. Right.
One word of advice: if you record it, you can record and get great stuff from out your crib. The one thing, man, is take your time before you send it out. Make sure that your performance is good. A lot of times I get sessions from people like they're saying their hooks shit is all like just all over the place. They messed up some of the words and like it just seems like they don't care. They just want to get it out. Take your time, man. Like spend a lot of time on getting something done the right way because once it's out, it's out. You know what I mean? So just take your time and just try to get clean as possible. You know. Don't send people files with effects on it and reverb and things. Just record dry, clean, take your time, and and don't be afraid to ask somebody for some advice. Like, hey, listen to this record. What do you think of it? Sounds good. If they say, hey, fix this, because at the end of the day, man, you just want to give the engineer the best possible stuff to work with, so that they can
please don't put reverb on the stems.
Yeah, and stacks is not the same thing as volume. If you one vocal doesn't sound loud enough, something else is too loud. People. I come into people come in the studio all the time thinking like I need to stack my verse 3 times. Unless that's the sound you're going for, you don't need to stack your verse 3 times.
No, but you know what that comes from? And what I find a lot of times, that comes from people recording at a crappy studio where their engineer was like, okay, now record it again because they don't know how to compress vocals. They don't know how to get a full sound. So then they get into the mode that I got to do it 3 times. And it's so funny because I have this conversation all the time. They're like, okay, now I'm going to double it. I'm like, you're going to double it? It sounds great right now. Why would you double it? It makes no sense.
It's not going to be loud enough.
You want to do some spot doubles. You want to do some ad-libs. Cool, but why are you going to double it? Go listen to all the greatest old school hip-hop of all time. Rakim, 1 track. Chuck D, 1 track with flavor on another track. It's one track.
Or if we did have those people, it was for a specific reason. Pac's
exactly.
doubles were
Pac's
like a whole octave lower.
Right,
or
exactly.
If both brothers in harmony did it.
Yeah. You were doing it for a reason. You're not just... I used to record a lot of reggaeton, and they would have 6 tracks of everything. And it was like, dude, I don't even know what to do with all. Like, I run out of a pin. One's middle, one's hard left, one's hard right. Now, okay. I guess one's a little over here, right?
Filling the gaps.
Right. Okay. Now what am I doing? Okay.
Do we have any specific questions? If you could just step up to the microphone.
Infinite Skills. I'm actually an artist. I've sat in on one of Wise's sessions in Alexandria, Virginia. He's actually the reason why I'm here at this seminar. But you guys have started to answer some of the questions. But what are some of the other things that you can do as an artist that make you want to work with them, and also about their workflow process that makes it easier to work with them?
Show up to the studio prepared. That's key. Have your song rehearsed and prepared. Already written, already rehearsed. Don't learn how to sound in the booth when you get to the studio. I mean, some people do, but if you already know how you're going to deliver it, then all you're really there to do is deliver a performance, just like a show. Sound check is set up the booth, and now you're in the booth. Perform the song.
I think one of the big things is just communication when you're in the booth. You know what I mean? We're talking to the engineer. If something's not right in your headphones, say it. I just have to constantly sit there and ask artists the whole session, can you hear yourself all right? Do you need delay, reverb? Do you hear, more snare, any of that kind of stuff? And a lot of them, I guess, just don't think to actually speak up if something's not right, and just let me know what you want from me, and I'll do it. That's, I think, a big thing is just
I used to
communicating
always
with me.
tell people, and it sounds weird, but the studio is not really to make the record. It's really to record the record. Like the making of the record you can do in a car or in your house, and especially if you're on a budget. By the time you get to the studio, you should have as much done as possible. Memorize your lyrics, figure out what you're going to do before you actually step into the studio.
We used to call making beats pre-production. Like that was that side pre-production. Back when I was a kid and I was spending other people's money, my manager's money, it was like, I'm having this record, good to go, ready to launch. When I get in there, boom, I'm done in 2 hours, with what I got to do. The other thing, too, is be a little patient at the beginning if you're working for an engineer for the first time. You'll work up a dynamic together. Like some guys like to work at a little slower pace. And after I've worked with them a little while, I get in. I see that rhythm. Some guys want to fly through. Some guys are paying $75 an hour, and they're there, and they want to knock out 4 songs. So I'm bouncing. What's next? Because I know that's what their goal is, to get out of there quickly, and they want to get 4 songs. But other guys, I've got clients who come in for 6 hours to do a verse, and they just want to hang out and relax and feel the vibe and write it and Okay, cool. I'm gonna stay out of you. You can afford that? Fantastic. That's wonderful. It's a good day for me. And I'll sit back and let you do your thing. And so be patient. And I think if you tell people like up front when you walk in, I got 8 joints. I've had people come in for an 8-hour session and be like, I got 9 joints. I'm doing my mixtape today. Here it goes. And it's like, okay, all right, here we go. Now that means like I'm not gonna be real extra critical if you ask me what I thought of the tape. Right. Right. But if you like it, okay, you like it, cool.
It goes back to what he said. Know what you want. Know what you're trying to do from the jump when you come in. Because like Guru said, if you already rehearsed it from the jump and you know exactly how you want to stack it, if you're gonna stack it or not, then the rest should just be dropping.
Yeah, you just captain a performance at that point, and that's the whole thing. It's like I said, the booth is your stage. If rapping stuff on time isn't going to make you sound like you meant it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what a lot of people don't seem to understand. Like a good engineer captures a good performance or a great performance if you're lucky. But if you come in not really knowing your verse that well, or you just wrote it today, then you better at least know how your voice sounds and how to inflect it. Because some people can do that. Some people are so comfortable with their voice and their rap delivery that they can write a verse right there on the spot and know how to make it sound like they wrote it 3 weeks ago.
You work with Jay. I work with some of Jay's boys that came up with, like, I work with Wise P and Sauce Money and them. They don't even, they sit there and they just sit in the room. I leave them alone and write the shit in their head. Yeah. And, 20 minutes later.
I tell artists all the time that's that's abnormal. Yeah, that somebody can do that and write it that way. For me, I like for the artist to be prepared. I like when you call me ahead of time and we discuss those things. Hey, I like reverb. I don't like reverb. I like this. I want to do that. Right. Like as a person that's paying for a service, you have that right. It's the same thing as like telling your barber before he cuts your hair, yo, I want my line this way. What are we doing today? Like you fading it. That's like your barber just cutting your hair and then start asking you questions about how you want your hair cut.
And I want you to feel at the end of the day that you got your money's worth when you came. You may be paying more to come see me or any of these gentlemen than you would to see, but you got done more in 3 hours than you would have done with someone who wasn't that great.
We got another question.
Kind of to that end, is it offensive to any of you guys if they bring to you like a mix of theirs that they already know that they like, and they say, hey, I like how I sound on this mix. Can you, I have a new song. Can you make it sound like this or better? Or
I mean, me personally, I wouldn't take any offense because it's customer service. You said you wanted it that way, so I'm going to make sure I can get it, if not that exact same way, get it as close as possible. Just know what you want, and we just here to give you what you want.
I mean, from a personal perspective, like just personal, I love working on a record blind. Like that's more fun to me, but if most of the time, like if I'll just tell the person, like, is there anything, you got a rough mix that you want me to hear? And I've got a lot of clients who are just like, no, go. They just want me to go put my spin on it. Right, and then I got some clients who are like, I just want this sound like this, or they might play me, they want me to listen to a record that's out. I had a client recently who was like, yo, that record you worked on with Wale, I kind of want it to sound like that. Okay, well, I can go back and listen to that record and see what I did. And it's actually like.
We have another question?
Yeah, as a friend to sound engineers and recording engineers is a different thing. Like, I run into some recording engineers who say, I only do stuff dry. But as an artist, a performer, I get inspired by the reverb and the dynamics that I'll have when I'm monitoring what I'm doing. Right. Mm-hmm. Also, what's most important is that if I record dry and I monitor dry, I get my master's all sweetened up, I go do a live performance, and I don't know what the hell is on it. Right. So, is it a logical practice to tell an artist what are their best levels in as far as compression, EQ, and dynamics, so that after they do their recording, when they go up on stage, they ain't sounding like they Milli Vanilli,
Right. Well, that'll be our last question too, and when you guys answer this, that will be the end of our panel. But that's a great question.
Yeah, that actually ties into what I thought about the other question. There's nothing wrong with showing somebody a rough mix because, like you said, it's your choice. We're in the service industry. We should do that. Right. If you are working with an engineer that has a lot of experience, though, I would say, as an artist, maybe you can meet us in the middle and don't be closed-minded. Don't be like, I want it to sound like this and that's it. Sure, yeah, of course, a good engineer should be able to accommodate you any way they want and accommodate themselves for what they need to listen to record the signal.
First thing I ask a singer when they're doing vocals, like, you want to hear some reverb in your headphones while you're singing, or do you like to sing and drive? And recording it and playing it back through my vocal stack of plugins so that you hear it. Because as I think too, that comes from being a producer. You want to hear it the way it's kind of almost supposed to be when you play it back, because a lot of studios rip people off, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody else in here, but a lot of studios, they record you all dry, they don't do any extra work, and then they want you to pay for the mix, because they know it takes more time, and they're charging by the hour, and it takes more time, and you want me to do this, and I get Pro Tools sessions back, and there's nothing that's been done, not a damn thing applied.
There's a huge point that I always try to make too, so that people can understand this, because sometimes the language gets messed up. It's the same thing as having your family lawyer do your entertainment contracts. There's the reason why there's an entertainment lawyer, because that's what he does, and there's a reason why there's your family lawyer. So there's a huge difference between an engineer that records and mixes in the studio and a live sound engineer. Sometimes I look at our live sound engineer and I'm like, I don't want your job. You know what I mean? Because of how difficult it is. Mixing live sound is completely different than recording a record in a completely controlled environment.
Delays and
Crazy
all
room
kinds
stuff.
of all the tuning the room. I do some of that on the side, like just for fun, because I think it's interesting. Like,
God bless you.
I do some of it because I'll go, like, I'm in tech pools, and a couple times, it used to be more, especially when the economy was really bad. But I'll go do some live sound stuff, set up some line arrays. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the main guy, but to get that experience and be like, man, and you're exactly right, dude. It's a whole different ballgame.
I want to thank you guys personally for coming out and just giving up your experience and your knowledge to people that really need it. And please give a round of applause to these guys for giving up their time. I'm sure they'll be floating around. Please don't kill them with the questions, but they will be floating around to answer any questions, taking demos and things of that nature. But thank you again for coming out, and thank everyone that had us here, A3C, SAE, and we appreciate you guys coming out. Thank you.
Thank you.